It's time for more Auction Day on Your Money.
Many young Australians have given up hope of owning their own home, believing the barrier to entry into the property market is simply too high. Well, our next guest proves all of them wrong. Eddie Dilleen bought his first property aged 19 and was the first person in his family to ever own property. Now aged 29, he's here to take us through his burgeoning property portfolio and tell us how he's helping others build wealth through real estate. Eddie, it's such a pleasure to have you with us. Welcome to the show. How did you get your start in the property market? What's your story?
Look, for me, basically, I started from a really young age. I started getting interested in property when I was a teenager, and I came from a pretty poor family, so money was always tight, and no one owned a property at all. So for me, I really wanted to be the first one to buy a property, break that chain, and I started working at McDonald's from a really young age when I was at school. Worked at McDonald's for a couple of years, saved that deposit, and by the time I was 18 years old, I had that deposit, and I just jumped in, did a lot of research, and bought that first property.
So how much was the deposit that you saved?
It was only about $20,000, so
that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That means you didn't spend a cent of what you earned at McDonald's, pretty much.
Yeah, I saved it for a couple of years, so I was putting $200 a week away, and over a couple of years, it turned into enough to buy one.
So you grew up in housing commissions. Obviously, that wasn't a home that was owned by your family. Was that part of your motivation? Was that sort of one of the things that made you think, I really want a house where I can, bang a nail into the wall and call it my own?
Yeah, absolutely. What I realised when I was a teenager that, a lot of my friends, they had their parents own property. One day they would inherit those properties, and I wasn't really going to get anything. So I really wanted to, be the first one to get a property and really kind of break that cycle and have that security there as well. And I guess that's what a lot of people want. So,
well, you might not have owned a home, but what you had a house, but what you had was a home, and obviously great values. Because I love the story. I think that there's this difficult, and we talk about what people did in the old days and how it used to be. We're talking about 10 years for you, and it's been a great journey. What was the first property that you bought, and why did you buy that one?
The first one was actually about an hour and a half away from where I live. So I bought on the Central Coast, about an hour and a half north of Sydney. And the reason, there's a lot of different reasons, but one of the main ones is come down to affordability. I was only 18 at the time, I wasn't making much money at all. So I really I ideally wanted a house, but I started off with a unit instead because that was in my price range. And I bought it as an investment property, and it had a really good rental return. So I thought that if I could get in as soon as possible, buy something small, and then over time that would grow in value, and I'd be able to continue building up.
Now, at the moment, we've got a property up on screen. I believe this is one that you started a buyer's agency, and this is one you've helped secure for a client. So this one, they only paid $289 for, but they're renting it out at $350. So this is an investment property. Tell us a bit about how you made the transition from being an investor yourself into a buyer's agent, and how your agency is working now.
Yeah, absolutely. It was quite a journey, really. Like that property in particular, it was it's got the rental page of $350. It was rented out for a little bit less at the time, but I knew by looking at some other comparable rentals that you could put that rent up, and that was only about half an hour from Brisbane CBD as well, so extremely affordable and good value. Over the years, I started, as I built my portfolio to 16 properties, I started getting a lot of relationships, working with real estate agents. They would call me if some amazing deals would come up, and they might not have been on advertised online or anything like that, so I'd be able to pick up some bargains when I could, and be able to buy a property that was actually below market value.
So how did you build this portfolio? You bought the first property, you worked hard, you got that $20,000 with blood, sweat and tears and not much going out. How did you develop from there?
It was quite a journey, really. I could use a bit of a combination of savings, so I worked a couple of different jobs, saved up as many deposits as I could. Every year I tried to save one deposit, and I'd do one. That was one way. I also used equity out of some of my other properties, so I started researching, learning about finance, learning about different banks and different strategies, continue leveraging off one property to moving forward. But I did save a lot of genuine deposits by working. I was a bartender at night, and I'd work full time during the day for a number of years, so it's kind of a lot of delayed gratification. And so I did that a few years, but after a while I bought a few properties, I stopped, and then took it easy for a while, and then went from there. It's a great story.
It's a really great story. All right, let's take a look at another case study that a property you secured for a client through your buyer's agency. Just $214,000 spent on this property.
Where is it?
219, sorry.
Yeah, Australia.
Tell us a bit about whereabouts is that?
That is only 13 minutes south of Brisbane. So that's a modern property. It was a 3-bedroom townhouse, had depreciation. The original owner of the property bought it off the plan, so they bought it off a developer that and they basically paid too much. My strategy is buying existing properties that are not off the plan. I try to pick them up if they are urgent sales. Maybe the owner's selling because they need to buy another property, or there's thousands of different reasons why the owner would sell quickly and accept a lower price.
We hear about the 3 Ds on here, this show all the time: death, divorce, and what's the other one?
Death.
Death. That's it.
That's why you don't remember it. It's the worst.
Glad I brought that up. Okay.
Yeah, there's actually some other good reasons as well. Like, so it's not all like negative. Something. A lot of the actual owners save money sometimes by selling a property quickly and selling it off market, because they don't actually often have to pay the advertising fees, the professional photos and all that kind of stuff as well. So sometimes it works out a win-win situation.
Now, how are you kind of helping people make sure that their properties aren't vulnerable to this current market cycle, where we're seeing prices pull back pretty dramatically in Melbourne and Sydney? Obviously, if you've got 16 properties like you do, then you're very exposed when the market drops. How do you work against the market cycle?
Yeah, I really focus on diversifying my portfolio. Like, the 16 properties I haven't only bought in Sydney, I've bought in Brisbane, the Gold Coast, Adelaide, even Cairns. So I've kind of, I realised over the years that properties in general were different markets. There was markets within Australia, and some, like Sydney and Melbourne, have taken a hit. They've come backwards a little bit, but that's only because they doubled in value over the previous 5 years before that. But other states like Brisbane is actually performing pretty well, as opposed to Sydney and Melbourne, that kind of thing. So different states are doing different things. I thought that if I could buy and diversify my portfolio and not have all my eggs in one basket, that even if Sydney and Melbourne come back a little bit, the long term they're still going to perform. They're good quality areas, and the properties in maybe Brisbane or Adelaide would continue growing in value, and because they've got different.
And you talk about diversifying as far as location. What about, do you like units? Do you like houses? Do you like how do you do that? How do you spread that your property portfolio?
I've got a combination. So everyone really likes houses, and I love houses as well. So I've got about 5 houses in my portfolio. The other amount is a combination of townhouses and units. So what I found with houses, like, you've obviously got that land component, which is amazing, but generally if you look at houses, they've got a really low rental yield gross. So you're looking 4%, 5%, 3%, depending on where it's at. But if you pick up a townhouse like that other one that we just shown for $214,000, that was modern, had depreciation, that was renting for $350 a week. So that was about an 8.5% yield, and it's in a metro area, close to shops, schools. That's an amazing buy.
No, not at all. That's fantastic.
$2 million properties renting for $700 a week. Now, to the west of Brisbane, a 4-bedder for $367. You helped a client into this deal recently. Why did you go after this deal? What did you like about this one?
Three main things. That one was a complete off-market deal through a real estate agent connection that I built up over the years. Number one being, it was below market value. Basically, I could physically see my other properties that are sold on the exact same street within 3, 4, 5 months that they sold for $400,000, $420,000. We picked this one up for $367,000. Owner needed to sell. They didn't have to pay the marketing or the other fees on it, so they just were happy to offload it as quick as possible because they needed to. So it was below market value, had a really good rental return. It rented at $400 per week. Was purchase price of $367, so it was just under about a 6% yield, about 5.8 roughly. And it was only half an hour to Brisbane, and it had that great
And there's a lot of infrastructure going into that corridor, isn't it, to the west of Brisbane, like heading towards Ipswich. There's certainly a lot of scope for it to get bigger. Now, I really want to get to this fourth property before.
It is amazing.
$186,000 to secure it, and renting for $300 a week. Where is this deal, and how did you find it?
So this property is only about 25 minutes south of Brisbane again. It's within like the Logan City Council, so it's a very blue collar area, but still next to shops, schools, train stations, and at the end of the day, you're half an hour to the city. So it's an amazing buy. The owner, once again, they needed to sell this property pretty quickly. It's in a townhouse complex. So we were able to negotiate where other ones had sold for $30,000 to $40,000 higher, and the owner had a portfolio. They were just happy to offload it as quick as possible to get a sale and get their equity back, basically. It rents for $300 a week.
Even at $30,000 to $40,000 more, I mean, at 186, that would make it about 220 or something like that. At 300 return, that's still a fantastic figure. And these aren't like the old swappy jalopy, the house that's falling down. That's the bar. Like the worst house in the best street. These are good-looking properties.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't get me wrong, I've bought some properties that are, 90s builds and all that kind of stuff, but these ones here, people bought them at different times in the market. Well, maybe compare it to Sydney when Sydney was at its peak, and now the market's come down a little bit. That's kind of what I'm doing, picking up the bargains when you can, so you can hold them for the long term and continue leveraging the build.
I love hearing a 29-year-old talk about the old properties from the 90s. That's great.
27, yeah. 27.
Yeah, what does that make us? Are you 27 now?
Yeah.
I think I aged you in our intro. I called you 29. Have you made any mistakes along the way? Is there anything you've learned from, or have you sort of had a dream run so far?
I have made some mistakes, I guess. Like, I actually took a break after that first property. I didn't do anything for about a year and a half, 2 years. I kind of sat on my hands, and because that was my initial goal to buy the first property, I just said, that's it, I'm going to stop now. And so I didn't do anything really. I just spent all my money. I went, traveling, partying, and all that kind of stuff, where I could have been buying more property.
Really? But do you regret living a bit of your youth? I mean, it is important to do both, isn't it? It's nice to set yourself up for the future, but you don't get your 20s back. It's good to kind of have a bit of both. It sounds like you've done it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Yeah, for sure.
Do you think now you're dealing with clients and you've learned and you're passing on that knowledge that you've learned firsthand? You are the success story, coming from nothing and creating it yourself, and you should be very proud of that. Is there things that you think different now for people who are watching, who might, are young as well and wanting to get in the market? Do you think it's harder now in this present market than it's been?
If anything, I think it's about the same, or even easier to get in the market. I think it really comes down to, looking at your expectations and what markets you're talking about. Because Sydney and Melbourne, look, they are on the higher side, but if you can diversify, maybe for a young person looking to get started, they can buy something smaller as an investment property first. You don't have to buy your dream house and mansion right away. That's the kind of strategy that I took, and just starting small, gradually building, and over time, might be 5 years down the track, you can use some equity and you're saving, and buy that nice fancy house on the beach that you want to down the track.
How far are you away from buying your nice fancy house on there? Is it a 5-year plan, 10-year? Like how long do you think you've got until you secure your dream house?
Probably about 3 years away, 3 to 4 years roughly. Yeah. Me and my partner, we just bought a place to live in, so it's it's pretty. It was a nice house. And it was on a corner block, and also had development potential down the track if we do get the bigger house, but. I'm a firm believer of just being in there for the long term and delayed gratification and gradually building your portfolio and over time.
Great. Well, look, it's a great success story. It's the Aussie dream, isn't it? From starting and building it all yourself and doing living the dream and finding your own home. But you're now passing that knowledge and looking after people yourself, so people can check you out. And if you Google Eddie Dilleen, you'll find some details on you and be able to see if you can get into helping other people do the same story that you have lived yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eddie. We'll have to get you back when you've done some more deals.
Yeah, we'll follow your journey.
I'm going to take a quick break now, but when we come back, we'll preview our next live auction in Palm Beach, Queensland.